I am an author, and so I want to sell my books. And so it was recommended to me to purchase a blog campaign, like it's called a blog tour, where someone who has a lot of connections will
Hmm.
reach out to their connections and say, hey, would you be interested on featuring this lady's book on your blog? And so that spreads the word. And I was like,
Hmm.
okay, people say do it. So I did my research. I did all my due diligence. I found a blog tour person and I booked my blog tour. And she was absolutely legitimate. She was lovely to work with. She did her job. It was great. And nothing happened.
No
It was
sales, no books, nothing.
no, not at all. And so I was glad for the experience. I was grateful to have been able to see my book up on these different blogs
Hmm.
and social media sites, and at least know that a couple people did read it for this tour. But at the same time, it was not paying for itself.
No
So I'm
kidding.
like, okay,
Okay.
well, how about this? What if I do my own blog tour by actually making the connections myself? And
Hmm.
yes, that's going to take a whole lot more time and effort than reaching out to somebody and saying, hey, you already know a bunch of people. Do this for me, please. But because I am invested in my book and my
Hmm.
sales and my people, I am probably going to get a lot more out of this if I just go to people and say, hey, we seem to like the same books. Would you be interested in taking a look at my book and putting a post about it on Instagram or on TikTok or whatever? And
Hmm.
so just reaching out to people myself, because then at minimum,
Hmm. Hmm.
if nothing happens, I will have not paid a fee for a blog tour. But if
Right.
something does happen, that's great. And I still will not have paid a fee for a blog tour.
This is fascinating. Okay, so you paid for it. It didn't pan out, and so
Mhm,
you went and figured it out yourself.
mhm.
Okay, I love that. But why do you think it didn't work? Right? Because it has worked in the past. Like I remember 10 years ago, blog tours were like all the thing, and people would like they'd even set it up like on this day we're all going to convene on this person's blog, and then everybody's going to move over to this person's blog, and people way to get new views and maybe subscribers. And um, I always thought it was kind of a cool idea. Why do you think it didn't work for you this time?
Well,
Or do you think it works at all?
That's a good question. I would have to test it out more often with more books, which I'm probably not going to do because again, I don't want to test it out on that fee every time. But
Right.
my gut tells me that it
Hmm.
didn't work because there are so many books. Like these people who are doing these blogs and these Instagram posts, they're doing a review a day. There's so many books in the
I
world
see.
and they're
Okay.
expensive. So
Mm.
if somebody wants to read your book, they have to be very, very invested, very interested, very caught by your
Hmm.
book alone. And so I think that just among all the bajillions of books that are being posted on these sites or on these profiles all the time, I
Hmm.
think everybody was like, "Oh, that's a cool cover. That's a cool book." Moving
Hmm.
on, keep
Hmm.
scrolling, and so and it was also kind of funny because there were a couple of Instagram profiles where I was super grateful that they took on my book, but I was like, "Really? Because the other books that you
This is
post."
not a niche fit.
No, it is not at
Okay.
all. So that also was probably a big part of it, which is also probably why me reaching out to people where I at least vet this site beforehand. I'm like, oh yeah, they look like
Hmm.
they kind of would do the same books as me. I mean, for example,
Nice.
I'm currently on a street team for
Hmm.
an upcoming book, Grave Flowers by Autumn Krause. She's a great author. She and I are friends. It's really great. And I'm looking, and her books and mine are not similar, but similar audiences. And
Hmm.
so now I've gone through everybody on this street team, and I'm looking forward to reaching out to them and saying, "Hey, it seems like we like similar books. Would you be interested in my book?" So the fact that
Awesome.
I'm actually taking the time and effort to vet these,
Hmm.
um, that also makes it more impact. It's going to make it more impactful, I think.
Yeah, no kidding. So when you went and tested this for your first books, or after that book tour,
Mhm.
blog tour didn't work, what did happen? Did you learn anything, or what was something that surprised you, perhaps from doing it yourself and feeling, darn it, I shouldn't have paid for the thing, maybe, or okay, lesson learned. But what was the outcome when you went and did it yourself? or they
Yeah,
started?
so honestly, I'm still in the process of doing it myself because
Gotcha.
I
Okay.
am so I it, another good thing is that it's forcing me to break a little bit of a bad habit, or if not a bad habit, at least an inefficient habit, which is
Okay.
I had the feeling that in order to make a connection over the internet, I had to fiercely interact every day with every post from every person and try to get their attention and wait until I saw that I had gotten their attention to then reach out. So
Mhm.
basically, I needed to make actual friends first
Okay.
with these people I was feeling in my head, and that is just not conducive to anything at all. So the habit that it's forcing me to break is to be okay with just kind of reaching out and being like, "Hey, you don't know me, and frankly, I don't know you very well, but I think this would be a really cool thing. Are you willing?" And the worst thing they can say is no. Now, have I gotten up the courage to do that yet? I'm working on it. I'm working on it, and in fact, I'm taking a tiny hiatus
Mhm.
just for a few weeks to build up that energy that it's going to take to dive in, and then I
Yeah.
feel once I dive in and just get used to it, it's probably going to come a whole lot easier.
Yeah.
But
That's
yeah, I'd say that's what I have learned and what I foresee myself continuing to learn.
awesome. No, that's excellent. Okay, that's excellent. All right. It's been well, you've been writing novels and working on novels for a couple of years now. And so, as part of this show, Brave New Frontier, it's all about what are people doing differently this year and into the near future, given how fast things have changed in the last couple of years. Like, we had the pandemic, and then we had the rise of remote work, or at least remote work taken a lot more seriously than it had ever been done before. And now there's AI thrown into the mix and stuff. And so, gosh, since the pandemic, maybe what's different for you? What are you doing differently since maybe that you weren't planning to do, and then the pandemic changed it, and now you're doing something different?
That's a good question. One of the things is just the presence of being able to work online. That is phenomenal because before the pandemic, a lot of the interactions that you would have to slash get to do would be in person. You would go to coffee shops and meet other
Hmm.
authors, and you would go to events and meet other authors. And that's still great, and I still want to do that. But the pandemic has also just massively increased the viability of actually doing legitimate business online. And so that's
Hmm.
very helpful for people who don't have the opportunity, or it's again not conducive
Hmm.
to say go and pay the fee for this writers conference where you may or may not get it may
Anything
or may not
back?
pay for
Right.
itself,
Right.
Exactly. So the fact that I can just go on Instagram, on Facebook groups, I can meet people over Zoom. Just the other day with my editor, Scott Editorial, love them. We did an International Women's Day video, and I got to do that over Zoom. We
Oh, how
probably never
cool.
would have done that before the
Hmm.
pandemic. So
Hmm.
that is huge, and I think it's great, honestly, because it allows one for introverts. It's
Hmm.
really helpful because as much as I really do love being able to interact with people, and I know that there's like a concreteness and a genuineness to it, and I think it's absolutely irreplaceable. It is also something that for me,
Hmm.
and I think probably a lot of other authors, does require energy output, which
Hmm.
is then energy output that maybe can't go to the writing process or the other
Oh, yeah.
parts of
Yep.
having your own business. So being able to do stuff online that actually streamlines it and allows you to be able to maintain that energy so you can put it into the creative process, or so that you can at least just then translate it to reaching out to people over Instagram that you don't know very well.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So you've published two books. I think you're working on your third. You got another book that you're working on.
Mhm.
You also you volunteer, I think, as a mentor in a writing community. Side brackets, it's our community that we also run, LegendFiction. But you're also doing that. You also are an editor, and so that's kind of apart from writing, and then apart from what we're getting up to and building up Saga Brand. But you also run your own editing service. Let's talk about that a little bit. Uh, what do you feel you bring differently as an editor? There are a lot of editors out there. What's your edge that excites you about being an editor?
Well, for one, I'm an author, and a lot of people aren't both well, I shouldn't say a lot of people. The editors that I have come across,
Hmm.
not as many of them
Hmm.
have written their own book and then are editors. I have been in the trenches. I know exactly what you're going through, and I know how just it's a weight off your shoulders to
Mhm.
have an editor who knows the craft, who knows how to just kinda spit shine your thing up and really make it
Yeah.
make it to the absolute pinnacle that it can be, because
Mhm.
as an author, you pour your blood, sweat, and tears, you put all this effort, time, years, sleepless nights, eye strain, into this book, and you still miss stuff. I mean,
Mhm.
sometimes I'll sit there at my own manuscript that I've worked on forever, and someone will point out a line that didn't make sense, and I'm like, "I don't even know what I was trying to say. I'm so confused." Because as you're just putting so much work into it, you're
Mhm.
missing stuff because 'cause you're tired. And so
Mhm.
then being able to have an editor who knows how to make what you have in mind, who knows how to just make it sharp and tight
Mhm.
and the best thing it can possibly be, takes a weight off your shoulders. I mean, I know that when I send my manuscripts to my editor, I'm like, "Danny, take care of it." I know that it's in good hands. I know that it's gonna come back and she's gonna come up with great one-liners that I've never thought of. She's gonna make it flow. She's gonna catch my mistakes. And so it's having a partner, honestly, in this big endeavor.
Yeah. Okay, so you're experiencing what, you're also offering to others. You're doing it because you've experienced it yourself.
Yeah.
Um, what's the name of your editing, uh, the editing not tool, what's it called? It's got this really cool name that you shared with me just the other day. What is it again?
Oh, yeah, so we're rebranding. It is now Bone Piercer Media.
There we go, there we go. Okay. And you also have a degree, don't you?
I
In
do.
is it fiction writing, fictive writing?
So no, believe it or not, it's actually in English writing, rhetoric, and technology. And
That's
so
what
the
it is.
fun thing about that degree is it's not just an English degree. So a typical English degree, you go in, you learn the mechanics of how to write a good paper, you take some literature classes, and they say go do something useful.
Mhm.
What I got, which is really, really fun, is a little bit more of a communications and media degree with the English. So they
Nice.
taught
Okay.
me how to write good papers. They taught me how to write good fiction. They taught me how to
Okay.
make multimedia when that is more effective
Mhm.
than doing solely a piece of writing. They taught me about
Nice.
advertising and social media. And so that was one of the reasons for the rebrand, because before it was just a press, my independent press. Now it's
Okay.
Bone Piercer Media, because
Mhm.
not only do I do editing, but I do video editing, I do audiobook recording, I do
Ah,
formatting of the books.
nice.
And so basically, Bone Piercer Media is a little bit more of, well, it's a media company. It's a publishing professional
Mhm.
freelancing thing.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
nice.
that is really an edge that I have, which is really nice, is that I'm not necessarily confined to one narrow piece. I do have my
Mhm.
favorites, line editing, that's my
Mhm.
favorite. I do have very specific places that I know, and I know how to work it, but because of my degree, because of my training, and because of my experience having published these 2 books and knowing that it's
Mhm.
not just about writing good paragraphs, you have to get
Mhm.
the message across, you have to work with other people to get the editing properly, you have to decide how the cover is going. Now, I didn't design the cover, but I know
Sure.
about how the cover catches people,
Mhm.
advertising it via the videos and the book trailers that I made by myself,
Mhm.
formatting the interior so it doesn't look schlocky, I suppose,
Yeah, yeah.
formatting the interior so
Mhm.
that people look at it and they think, wow, this looks like it was published by a big professional company. And well,
Mhm.
it wasn't published by a big company, but it was published by a professional one, because
Mhm.
I have had that training both in school and in the field.
Yeah, yeah. What inspired you to pick that degree?
That's a funny story. So originally, I was going to pick a fiction degree. So we had picked the
Yeah.
college. I was gonna go to University of Colorado, Denver. It was fantastic, online. It was great. And so basically, I knew the area that I wanted to go for the degree program, and at the time I had in my mind getting a fiction degree.
Mhm.
And then my mom and I were looking over the thing to make sure that this is where we were wanting to where I was wanting to go.
Mhm.
And I was looking at the classes, and mostly they were about picking apart older literature, which,
Mhm.
of course, is important to learn how to write fiction, but it was a whole lot less of actually writing fiction, and then certainly a whole lot less having to do with publishing. And
Mhm.
the other problem with that is that it's a kind of a very narrow degree. So
Mhm.
with a specifically fiction degree, you either write books, you
Mhm.
teach people how to write books, and I suppose a couple of other things. Um, but then there was this other degree, English writing, rhetoric, and technology, which I could still cater exactly to my fiction writing wants. But
Mhm.
again, there were so many other things I was going to learn, and there were so many other classes that were going to be applicable to so many other jobs.
Mhm.
So I had these opportunities through this thing, and so my mom was like, she was leaving it completely up to me. And but she was in all her wisdom, which I thank her for to this day because I am so happy with the degree that I got, is that this looks like it affords a whole lot more opportunities, whereas this other just fiction degree might box you in. So I
Mhm.
decided to go for the English writing, rhetoric, and technology degree.
Mhm.
And here I am with Bone Piercer Media because of
Yep.
it.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And this is why you and I think, have hit it off so well, and we've been working together for like, is it almost a year now? At least 8, 8, 9 months or
Yeah.
something now. Like over time, more and more seriously. And the thing that's been so cool is the fact that, first of all, we both connect along the lines of, well, why fiction matters like at all, because it's just awesome and fun. But the things that you learn in fiction and how to construct a good story and a compelling story with great characters and earning the outcome, you can apply all of that also to branding, to marketing, to advertising, to how to start a business, how to run a business, and how to help other people also do that. And it's because it's technically the same thing. You're creating a story or helping someone define a quest and then helping them win at it. And you can either make it up or you can help somebody who's actually real do it. Um, so, okay, last question, which is kind of fun. And I didn't prep you for this one. Let's say all you had to do was only focus on, let's say, Piercer Media. What might be holding you back from 10xing your growth or 10xing the impact or the ability to make income? Or what do you see as holding you back from being able to make it absolutely massive and do a ton with it?
Frankly, that discomfort with cold contacting people.
Hmm.
That honestly is the thing that's holding me back because if I were to just go in and spend, because I could just spend a day, put a podcast in my ears or some music, and then just research a list of accounts and websites and
Hmm.
people who might be interested, and then the next day put in a podcast in my ears or music or whatever, audiobook, whatever's striking me that day, and the next day just reach out to these people.
Hmm.
I would just wind up contacting so many people, and the lovely thing about the book community I have found,
Hmm.
and again, I say book community because a lot of my Bone Piercer stuff is directed toward people who are independently publishing or something around there because,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
editing, book formatting, audiobooking.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of those people are really, really nice. So even
Yeah.
if not, and just want because the book world, it is like staying afloat, but only just, and we all need each other to
Hmm.
lift each other up. So it's not a really competitive world where it's like, no, I only want to work with this person, or am I gonna wind up cutting ties with this other person, or I don't want to no, we all have to support each other all the time. So it's not that I'm doubting that I would get responses or even just, oh, I have to politely decline, my schedule's full, or I've already reached out to someone else. That's
Hmm.
not what I'm worried about. It's just that I'm not I'm not the kind of person who turns around in the line at the grocery store and says, "Hey, how are you doing? Let's have a conversation." I just don't even know what that feels like.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
once I just get past that and I practice and I learn and I know I'm gonna fail and I know I'm gonna do things where the next day I'm like, "Ugh, I
Hmm.
cannot believe that I did that." I know it's gonna happen, but we're business people. That
Hmm.
happens and you gotta get used to it. So just once I get past that leap, once I just take the time to push everything else aside, get this important thing done, I think that is really gonna be a stepping stone, a major turning point for Bone Piercer.